It's 15 minutes. Jake. We're gonna cut this in 2 seconds. All right, so you saw an artist using the technique of when we would blend, okay, and how they would use their definite separate strokes that we've been seeing with Impressionists. I want to talk a little bit about a woman who was an Impressionist painter, and her name was Mary Cassatt. And she was born in Pennsylvania, but she spent most of her life in France studying with Impressionist painters. And she also liked to focus her thoughts and her subject matter on women, okay? As a woman painter, she looked at the bonds between women and children, the bonds of motherhood with children, sister with sister, that sort of thing. And she's known as one of the three great ladies of Impressionism, and her work really shows the contrast between light and dark and of movement, and it's sort of very modern. And remember when we just saw that painting where that tree was in front of Washington Square, and they talked about the leaves and how they were painted with just the small brush strokes to give you an airy look. And that's what Cassatt would do. And she often was dismissed by other men as far as being an artist, because back then, women were not as important as artists as men were. And even when they would judge your work in a jury or at a show, if you weren't a friend of a jury member who was always male, you really did not get that great of a review. And she absolutely refused to have her work judged on the fact that she was friendly or was having a romantic affair with a judge to get a good review of her work. So she just kept painting, and she was very determined to get her work acknowledged. And she ends up becoming a great friend of Degas, a wonderful French impressionist. And he invited her to paint with him. And she goes to paint with him. And they do a lot of work together. And she learns his style. And they join together. And at this point, Cassatt becomes recognized as an Impressionist painter. And this is really when her work begins to take off. When we go later, we will see a video about her work, but I want to talk about another Impressionist artist, and you've seen some of his work in these videos so far, but another famous Impressionist artist, John Singer Sargent. And he was considered the leading portrait painter of his generation. And he created more than 900 oil paintings, more than 2,000 watercolors, and many, many sketches and charcoal drawings. So he was a prolific artist, meaning he produced a great deal of artworks during his career. He was born of American parents, but he was born in London, and he stayed in London with his parents and was painting there. So he was American by birth because of his parents. And he began working, and his ability to draw with a brush was very important. Now, we just saw an painting where the artist sort of outlines with the brush to define the artwork, as opposed to the soft edges created by the painting. He was using this drawing with the brush as well as a technique. And later he was a very avid musician, and he ended up going to Spain, and he just adored the music there. And he worked on his music, and he worked on his art. And he found that the music of Spain was so inspirational for his artwork that he used it to create dramatic effects in his work. And we're going to see something today, his very, very famous painting called Portrait of Madame X. And I want you to take a look at that and we'll discuss it. Again, you're seeing women and children. Look at the brush strokes in this piece to make the plan. Jake. So now we're going to see John Sargent and see what's going on, John Singer Sargent, and see his artwork as well. Now remember, they talk about Cassatt is being different as an artist at this time because she does mainly figure painting as opposed to landscapes. And you're going to see John Sargent's Madame X, which was considered very risque at the time, and it's his best known portrait. See those brush strokes? Look at the palette. Okay. Okay, so you saw how he transitioned into an impressionistic painter. Right now, I'm going to talk to you a little bit about the final impressionist that we're going to talk about today, and that's going to be Whistler. And maybe you've heard of Whistler, but I want you to look at this video of his work, and then I'll discuss it. Mhm. So his famous painting is called Whistler's Mother. It commemorated mothers all over. This is the lines during the Depression. Right. So he was soft when he painted. Here's some of the etchings that he's done. Who is he known for? Right. Jake? Right. So you saw Whistler's Mother, which was, as I said, his famous painting. And one of the things that we know about him was that he really departed from some of the things that Impressionists did. He too liked to paint people, all right? And he also felt that he could control his life through his painting. If bad things happened to him, he could control his life by looking at different things. And his his paintings were influenced by many different things. Now, you can't say that you didn't see that picture of his mother looking very much like that photograph of a family friend who was seated. So he took that and envisioned it, or maybe even looked at it for a while, and then transposed the idea of the friend who was this mother who was sitting in sort of mourning clothes meaning the traditional black that a widow would wear after losing their spouse. And he superimposes that idea with his mother. And one of the things that I think is interesting is that we talk about the fact that he turns the canvas around and paints on the back of the canvas. All right. So he can get this extra texture into his work. And that's kind of strange if you think about it. He is sort of taking an idea from a photograph and turning it around to use that idea to paint his mother. A little something to think about. So the Impressionists were really radical in their approach to artwork. And when you look back, you can see that this departure changed the very nature of art in the United States. And despite the negativity that these artists got, these Impressionists prevailed. They continued with their artwork, and it changed the face of art forever. Even today, we see American artists employing techniques of en plein air and short brush strokes that don't blend in the colors. So they were a great contributor to art in the United States and American art. That's the end of today's lecture. I hope you enjoyed it. Please take a look again at some of the videos so that you'll be more aware of these artists, and I'll see you next week.